So you end up going to this one-shot flea market, but then you end up having a booth at DeMartino's flea market in North Haven. How did that happen?
I didn't start at DeMartino's. I did the Milford Flea Market all summer, and then they closed it. So I had to go up to Plainview to do an indoor flea market, and I had one booth there. And what happened when I had the one booth there, I did the Plainview Flea Market for a couple of months, for a month or two, and I even brought one of my sons up with me because I was moving my kids back little by little to Connecticut. I brought one son with me, and I'll never forget. We went into the flea market, and, we were set up. We were there inside the flea market the whole day until about 5 o'clock when it closed. And everybody was talking about the weather was getting bad and blah, blah, blah. And here I am in Plainview with my son. And by the time I was closing up and taking everything out to the car, to my station wagon, I found out that there was almost a foot of snow on the ground, and it was windy as anything. But I had to fill my car. It took me a while to do that, and it was freezing, okay? And I learned the roads were so bad, they hadn't been plowed yet. Some of them had. But, another guy from the flea market said, my wife and I are staying right here. I said, where? And he just pointed across the street. He said, at that motel. He said, you better hurry up. They only have a couple rooms left. So I went across the street. I bought a room. I don't even remember. It wasn't much money, but my son and I slept there for the night. And by the morning, everything had been plowed. It wasn't windy. The roads were open. It was much better. I could drive home without any problem. So sometimes things happen, and you have to be adaptable.
How did you start selling at DeMartino's indoor flea market?
Well, after I went after Plainview, I wanted to find a place that was closer, and I think I found a place in Cheshire, Connecticut. I did a flea market like there, but again, there were no people there. Somebody at the flea market said, I'm going to DeMartino's. I said, what's that? He said, that's the biggest flea market in Connecticut. I said, really? Where is it? It's in Wallingford. Wallingford. I'm right next to Wallingford. So that following week, I was at DeMartino's, and I'm setting up to, I was given 2 booths because by then I was a bigger dealer. And I'm next to a guy selling baseball cards. And the guy selling baseball cards used to be at the Plainview flea market. And he had already moved into DeMartino's. He took the corner and he took 4 booths. He had money. And Norman and I, actually everybody called him Fat Norman because he was overweight. Norman and I became best of friends. He was
now. About what year was this?
What year? That was my the first time I was at DeMartino's. I don't remember the year, but it would have been. Oh God, it would have been probably it was in the 70s. That's all I can tell you. I'd have to figure it out.
So what was DeMartino's originally? Because I remember going there, and you could tell the building had a use before it was an indoor flea market.
It was a Barker's department store.
Okay, makes sense.
Barker's, and Barker's also had a big department store in West Haven.
So you started out doing well at DeMartino's with James Bond figures. How did that escalate within time?
And Star Wars and Star Trek. Excuse me.
So we're talking you're
by
talking at the late
1977.
Yep.
I was getting into Star Wars, but I had at DeMartino's, I had all my records, and by then I had about 50 boxes or more of record albums. I had about 10,000 records by the time probably more than 10,000 when I left DeMartino's. And I had to rent storage units, which killed me because DeMartino's was my storage unit. You know, I had 8 booths. I paid a lot of money, but I left all the stuff there. I didn't have to keep bringing it in and out. So basically what ended up happening is, they came around at DeMartino's. They gave everybody a little slip saying that the market was closing the beginning of May. But this was April, so I figured,
Now,
wow.
What year was this?
I don't remember the year, but I remember it was in April when they gave me the slip.
You're saying in the late 70s, though.
Yeah, probably. But here's the thing. Because I didn't start doing the big shows until after DeMartino's closed. And if I remember,
DeMartino's closed in the 80s.
80s, yeah. But there was a Star Trek show that one of my workers at DeMartino's told me about. It was at the Penta Hotel, and it was before 1983. And my worker at the Star Trek show, Joe Kindle, he was a young kid.
So hold on, let me just back up for a second.
Yeah.
Let's talk about before DeMartino's closed in early to mid 80s. You had a massive space. You started out there with 2 tables, but you ended up spreading out and it was a virtual store within this flea market.
Right.
Describe what it was. Describe what it was, what you amassed within time.
Right. But understand this. I didn't have to pay for storage.
That was
I had 8 booths. I think eventually
it was so obvious because it was you just had stuff. It was virtually hanging from the ceilings. Like, it was every inch of space had stuff in it. It was amazing. I remember my brother and I going. You had cabinets, sliding cabinets, and we would go and slide the cabinets open, and you had hundreds of things in these cabinets that looked like that you just discovered. So you were probably buying and selling so much that you couldn't keep up with it at some point.
Yep. Here's what happened. I couldn't. What happened is, this is crazy. This is I used to sell. I think I told you about Michael Watton. His name was. He was the kid who used to go to all the flea markets and buy stuff for me.
So let's talk about that. How you hired kids to buy stuff for you.
Well, I originally kept getting people who would go to flea markets because, see, I was open every Saturday and Sunday, and I could not go to the flea markets to buy stuff. So I had a half a dozen pickers who would pick up stuff and bring it to me and sell it to me. Then I had a dozen pickers. At one time, I think I had as many as 40, but they were inconsistent. Some of them would come once a month and sell me stuff, and they would only sell me what they couldn't sell. And I tried to buy everything I could as long as the price was right. And what happened is...
And you're talking Vigo and Palatoy and early Kenner Star Wars in the package, and you're very big on condition and rarity.
Well, I always tried to buy stuff in good shape because I remembered the first record I sold, and it had a scratch on it. And the woman, didn't want it with the scratch, but she wanted it because she couldn't find it for 10 years. Okay, so So, yeah, condition means everything, no matter what you're buying, what you're selling. If the condition isn't there, nobody will buy it, or it makes it harder to sell it, unless you get someone who absolutely has to have it. So this is one of the things. But here's what happened with Michael. He started buying for me, and he was bringing me, him and another woman were the two people who were bringing me the best stuff, and they were selling it to me. And every time they came in, Michael came in almost every week, and he sold me stuff. The woman had red hair. I can't remember her name. Damn it. She came in with boxes of stuff, but she only came in like once a month. So what happened is, I usually bought a lot of stuff from her, a lot of stuff from Michael, and all the other 38 people who used to go to the tag sale. I'd see them once every 4 or 5 months at the most. They usually only came to me when they needed money. I'll sell you this, I'll sell you that. And one of them came to me once, and he said to me, I have a bag of badges and pins. He says, but they're all, from music groups. Most of them were rock and roll groups. And he says to me, I need money. Give me $20 for the bag. I don't know what I bought. All I know is there were about 50 badges. I'm looking at them and I'm figuring, well, there's 50. Maybe I can get $1 each. I bought the bag, and I'll be honest, I threw it in a cabinet. I never put it out for sale. And what happened was, this is how crazy things work. Michael Watton had been selling to me for about a month or two, and he brings in his girlfriend, and he said, this is Stan. He says, Stan is the best dealer in the world. And his girlfriend says, why is that? Because he has everything that you could possibly want. And his girlfriend...
You did. You had everything.
Yeah,
You
and his
had
girlfriend...
Romulans. I mean, you had stuff that no one can find anywhere at that time.
Well, hey, I don't know. What are you going to do? But anyway, his girlfriend says to me, oh, God, I forget the name. Do you have a something pin? And I don't know. I didn't know what the hell it was. I can't remember the name. Darn it. And I said, a pin. And all I could think of was, something you pin on you. And I remembered that somebody had sold me a bag of pins. A Petra pin, she said. Do you have a Petra pin? What's Petra? She says, oh, it's a Christian group. Okay, and I remembered that I had a bag of pins, a plastic bag filled with pins. So I went right to where I had them. I had never put them out. But what happened was, I took the bag of pins out. I opened it up, spread it on the table, and Mike's girlfriend goes through it. Oh, my God, you do. And she pulled out the Petra pin. And she said, how much is it? And I said, well, I buy a lot from Michael. I said, I'll give it to you. You're kidding me. Do you know how rare this is? And I said, I have no idea. And she pinned it on her blouse right away. And Michael just turned around, smiling, and he said to her, I told you so. I couldn't believe that, but that's a true story.
Fantastic.
I had a Petra pin, a Christian rock group, and I have no idea. I had never heard of them before. All I knew is that, wow, they were in the bag. I put the whole bag out, and during the next week or two, I sold a lot of the pins.
I remember you were our internet. We would find stuff, and we would come in, and like the Commander Koenig doll. You knew all the information about it. I remember us bringing it to you and saying, Stan, what do you think about this? Then we had a Johnny West doll, and it very much looked like Roger Moore. But we didn't know it was Johnny West, and we said, Stan, is this a Roger Moore doll? And you went, nope, that's Johnny West. Like, this guy knows everything.
Because I was buying, selling, trading for years. And when you put a decade in, you begin to know every single little thing. But even then, you don't know everything. When I bought my first set of Dr. No lobby cards, I sold them immediately. I think I paid $25 for them, and I sold them for $35. Okay, I had no idea they were worth hundreds of dollars. And when I went back to the guy who had them, he had a couple more sets, so I bought all the rest of the sets. And I said to him, "Why are they $25?" I said, "All your other lobby cards are like $10 a set." He said, "Well, these are hard to get." And I said to him, "What makes them hard to get?" He said, "Well, it was a British film." And he said it came here to the United States, and none of the theaters would show it. He says, so Dr. No only played at drive-in theaters, and the drive-in theaters didn't need lobby cards because they had no lobby. He said some of them put a movie poster on the board out front, but he said even the movie posters are hard to get because they were all thrown away with all the lobby cards. Nobody used them. You don't use them for a drive-in movie theater. And I didn't know that. But
so you just kept learning along the way, and you started with a few things, but you started getting into everything.
Yeah, what happened is I took the lobby cards, instead of selling them for $35, I started selling them for $50. And you have to ask like $75 because everybody wants to get them cheaper. And then you have to go down to $50. Okay. And I sold them for $50. And I'm figuring, well, hey, one guy bought 2-3 sets from me and at $50. And the minute he buys 2-3 sets, I know he's probably going to sell them for $100 and then go down maybe to $75 to make the sale, or maybe $80. I don't know. But the thing is, well, I didn't know that they were worth $300-400 a set. So you learn that because I kept looking for them and I couldn't find any more. And when I finally found them in a magazine, they were $400 a set.
At what point in time did you start advertising in Starlog magazine?
Oh God. Not until I think it was the early 90s.
So that came later. So
yeah.
DeMartino's ended up closing down the indoor flea market, and that was essentially your warehouse as well because you stored everything there.
Right.
Didn't you start hitting the convention scene harder after that?
Well, here's what happened, and this is a story in itself. I walked up to Fat Norman, the baseball card guy, who still only had 4 booths. I had 8 or more, or maybe 10 or 12. I don't even remember because I kept adding as I kept getting more and more. And Norman said to me, he said, they're closing in May. He said, I can't believe this. And I said, well, it was April. So I said to him, well, we have a month. He said, what do you mean a month? He says, next week is May. I said, they're closing next week? He says, yeah, they're giving us 2 weeks to get out. I couldn't believe it. I had to negotiate with them. It took me a month and a half to get out of there and to move everything into storage rooms. And then I had to pay for the storage rooms. But what happened was, you see, I had people coming in every week to sell me stuff. And I was going to lose those people. But I also was ordering stuff mail order. And I used to go to Cheshire, Connecticut, to a video distributor. I started selling videotapes, VHS. And usually you would have to pre-order them. If you didn't pre-order them, you didn't get them. And it was the same thing with comic books. If you pre-ordered the comic books, you would get them. If you waited till they were printed and they were put out, people would grab them and then they were added them. Okay, so I had pre-ordered 15 Mickey Mantle VHS tapes because I'm right next to the biggest sport dealer in the whole flea market. And I'm going to put my Mickey Mantle tapes on the counter next to his booth. And they're going to fly because all the sport dealers go to him and he doesn't sell tapes. So, I ordered other things too, but here's what happens in life. You have to sometimes luck out. Be lucky. Have something happen. Like the Petra pin. And what happened is I called up that week trying to get a booth in a show. I called up the comic show, sold out. I called up the record show, sold out. I called up an antique show, sold out. And unless I wanted to go to Philadelphia or to Albany or to Boston, there was no shows open. I'm cleaning out stuff at DeMartino's. Lenny comes up to me. Lenny was he sold knives. He bought knives from me a couple of times, and I don't buy knives. But what happened was people would offer me, all this stuff. They'd take everything in the box, and the box had record albums, it had magazines, and every now and then it had something stupid in it, like a knife. And I'd put the knives in a certain spot, and Lenny would come in, and he would whenever I had 2 or 3 of them, he would buy the whole bunch because he deals with knives. Whenever I had baseball cards, Norman would buy the whole bunch. So, the thing is, you buy it cheap and you sell it for a little bit more to a dealer, and you allow them to make money. I had a woman used to buy all my dolls whenever I got a doll. I had another guy used to buy furniture from me. I had another guy used to buy coins because he was a coin dealer. So I'm learning about everything. And I sold everything. I sold a Corvette once, and I never bought it, but I knew it was for sale, and somebody wanted it. I sold a Wurlitzer, I think it was a 1015 jukebox once. And I didn't know anything about Wurlitzer jukeboxes, but I knew someone who had one for sale and someone who wanted one. So I put them together. And he paid $4,000 for the Wurlitzer. And the guy who, I sold it for gave me $100. I sold a Batman #1 comic book for $6,000, and the guy gave me $100. I sold a Superman #1 for $3,000, and the guy gave me $100. I would make deals simply because I sold diamonds, but I never touched them. I just put people in touch with one another, and they made the sale. And the guy who I saw who bought a diamond ring, he said to me, I can't give you anything. I didn't make much on the sale. So what am I going to do? When I sold my second Batman #1, the guy said to me, I can't give you anything. I'm not making much on the sale. And when I bought the Wiz #2 comic book, oh God, a fella brought it in who used to buy all my Norman Rockwell magazines. Mostly Saturday Evening Post used to put a Rockwell picture on the cover, and he would grab every one of them because he collected Norman Rockwell and he sold Norman Rockwell. So I always, anything I got with Norman Rockwell on it, I usually put it aside. He bought it. But he came in one day and he says to me, I have a Whiz #2 comic. He said, I don't know what it's worth. He said, I figured you could tell me. And I had the comic price guide. Okay. And what happened is the comic price guide had it in the book. And I looked at the book. I couldn't believe it. I said, how the devil did you get a book like this in perfect condition? He said, well, it's got a little rip up here on the top. And it did. On the front page, had a little half-inch rip on top. And he said to me, he said, I went to an auction. It was snowing out. There weren't many people there. He said, but they had advertised that they had a bundle of Saturday Evening Post magazines. And he said, I figured, I'm going to go grab them because there'll be a lot of Rockwell covers. And he says, I went into the auction. There were only a dozen people there. And he said, the magazines were all tied with rope all around them. He said the one on top had no Rockwell cover, and it was in bad condition. So he said, I figured maybe there's some good ones. He said, so I asked the auctioneer, could he cut the rope so I could look through them to see how many were there, and that way I'd know how much I could bid. And he said, I had $85 with me. And he said, he says, I went through the magazines, and he said, I figured, I'd go up to about $20, $25. He said, but in the middle of these magazines is a comic book. And he said, and the comic book is smaller than all the Saturday Evening Posts. He said, and the posts are all frayed on the edges because they had been in they smelled. He said they had all been in a basement or something for so long, they're turning brown on the edges. He said, but the comic book was right in the middle. It was sealed by the heavy weight of the books on top and under it. He said no air could get to it. He said, so look at it. It's in perfect condition almost. I looked it up in the price guide. Price guide priced it at $3,500. And I said to him, I said, how much did you pay for this book? He says, well, he said, here's the thing. When the minute I saw it, he said, I'm looking at it, and a hand grabs it and pulls it out of the pile. And it was the auctioneer. And the auctioneer said, this is not a Saturday Evening Post. We're going to sell this separate. And he put it on the table. And he said, I'm waiting to see what happens. And he says he decides to auction off the comic right away. And he said, I got a comic. He said, who'll give me $50 for it? It's an old comic. It's probably worth $100. Nobody. Who'll give me $40? Nobody. Who'll give me $30? Nobody. And then he says, $25. If no one here sees value in this book, I'm passing it. 12 people in the place all raised their hand. $25, $30, $35, $40, $45, $50, $55, $60, $70, And he says, and I started bidding at $70. And he said, $75 somebody bid. He said, and I only have $85. He says, if I bid $80, he said, somebody bids $85 and I lose. He says, so I shut up. And he says, and nobody would bid $80. He said, and I'm just about ready to bid the 80, and a woman bids 80. And he says, the dealer says, anyone for 85. I raise my hand. And he says, 85. And he says, 90. Who'll bid 90? And he says, oh my God, if she bids more, I'm dead. But he had said it was probably worth 100. The reason no one would bid 90, nobody wanted to make $10. So he got it for 85. The book was $3,500 in the catalog. I showed it to him. I said, but I have to make money on it. He said, give me 3,000. And I said, I'd like to pay 2,500. He said, I really need the money. I have a new baby. I got this, I got that, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, I'll give you the 3,000. I'll make 500. I kept the book for about 2-3 years. I finally had to drive it down to Baltimore. I sold it to Steve Geppi. Steve Geppi was my comic supplier. He owned a comic called Diamond. He owned a company called Diamond Comics. Diamond Comics sold comics all over the world. Every time Steve Geppi sold a comic book, he pocketed 20 cents, no matter what the comic was. I brought the comic down to Steve. Back then, it was in the price guide for $6,000. And that's what Steve agreed to pay me, even though it had the little cut on the top corner. And
absolutely amazing.
That was in the 1980s. And yeah, he paid me $6,000, and he had, somebody says, one fella there brought in a whole wagon filled with comic books. And the fella says, what should I do with these comics? He says, dump them all the way in the back of the old storage room. And so I said to Steve, Steve, why don't you sell them? And he says, I'm not going to sell those. They're worth nothing. So I said, would you mind if I put them in my station wagon? Yeah, that's a better idea. Take them. So I came home with about 4,000 comic books. I came home with $6,000. And about a year ago, I called Steve Geppi up. Over the years, I met him at a couple of shows. We talked. They were making a movie based on a comic book. Oh God, what was it? Can't think of it. It'll come to me. They were and there were people there, and I said to them, I wrote a script with a comic character. I said, if you want, I said, I'd be happy if you'd like to look at my script. Oh no, we're doing it on an established comic character. I said to the guy, they were just starting to make the Superman movies, and Marvel was getting into the business. And, they made the first Spider-Man movie or something. And I told them, I said, you're not going to make any money at all with that comic character. Oh, no, this is an established character. Yeah, but very few people buy it. Yeah, but they're making Spider-Man. They made Superman. Yeah, but people buy those comics. They don't buy the character that, what do you know? Well, I got a comic store. What do I know? Anyway, They made the movie on the character. It died.
What was it?
Died. They lost all their money. Wouldn't believe me. And Steve Geppi, he was
what
there.
Was it? Do you remember?
Do I what?
Do you remember what the character was?
That's on the tip of my tongue. When you get to be my age, you forget things, but it'll come to me. Anyway.
Tell the story about the kid with the coin.
It was a detective thing. It wasn't the Shadow. It was something else.
The Phantom?
No, no. It was a detective. It wasn't a guy in a suit. And that's the other reason why I knew it would never sell. Because the movies that they were making, Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, those were guys in suits. This guy was a detective. He had no suit. How could it sell? And nobody cares about it. It was done in the 1940s. Who the hell is going to care about it in the 1990s? But yet, the guy, I'm putting in $1 million. I'm going to be putting, we're going to raise the money. We're going to make the movie. You're going to die, I told them. And they laughed at me. Even Steve Geppi laughed at me. Because he used to sell
tell
books.
the story about the kid with the coins.
Yeah, Mike would go to tag sales. I gave him a list of everything I wanted. And I told him, I says, if you can buy it 50 cents, $1, but he used to buy furniture, and he used to sell furniture, and he used to he was buying things for $50 and $100. He was selling them for $100 and $200, and he didn't care about buying things for 50 cents or $1 in order to sell it for $5. But what I had mentioned to you is that I didn't know this, but he had worked out a way. He told me, he said, I go to every tag sale first. That's how I get the best buy. And I couldn't believe it. But how could you go to the tag sale first? They all opened up at 9 or 10 o'clock, and everybody was there at 9 or 10 o'clock. But Mike said he had a reverse telephone book. He would look up the address, and he would find out the phone number for that address. So when they put the ad in Saturday, Sunday newspaper for the tag sale the next week, he would look up the address, get the phone number, call the people, and he would offer to go there, help them price the stuff that they were selling, and he'd like to look and see if they have anything that he could use. And what he's looking for is old furniture, especially carved furniture. So he would, one way or another, get to go to the tag sales on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, even a Friday before the tag sale. And people would be, putting prices on things. And a lot of times on a Thursday, Friday, he would sit there with them, putting stickers on things and suggesting what it should sell for. He would help people. And they always gave him a good buy on whatever he wanted to buy. And that's how simple it was. He would bring me in Star Trek, Star Wars, Batman, Superman, Beatles, Elvis, whatever he could find, Rolling Stones, unbelievable. And he would get really neat things. And, he told me a story about how he would buy old U.S. coins from the 1800s. And he would get coins that were basically, not in great shape, Indian head pennies. He would get the old, quarters, with the barber quarters, the barber dimes, and he would, a lot of what he bought, they were worn. And the dealers in coins all wanted the best coins. They wanted the one where it wasn't handled that much. Those are the ones you could sell and get $100. Okay, but if it was all worn down, you'd be lucky to get $2, $3, $4, $5. Nobody wanted it. But he would buy those, and the guy would make a pile, and he would sell them the whole pile cheap, because Michael was a buyer. And when Michael went to the tag sales, he would use the coins to negotiate a sale. And I think I told you he was at a tag sale. They had a baseball card collection for sale. It was worth Michael knew it was worth at least $1,000. So he would like to buy it for $500. And the guy insisted, oh no, I got to get $1,000. So Michael, hedged a little bit, and finally, he offered the guy cash plus all the coins he had from the 1800s. And the guy had never in his life ever seen a 2-cent piece a half dime. He had never seen a half cent. And yet Michael had them all in his pocket. And so the guy made him a deal. He took a small amount of cash, I think it was $100, and he valued the coins. And Michael probably had 50 of them or so. He valued them at about $400. Okay, but he didn't know what they were worth. And to be honest, they probably were worth $400, but only if you sell them one at a time to whoever wants them. If somebody's going to buy them all, you're going to be lucky to get maybe 200. So Michael made a deal. He got his baseball card collection, and he wanted to pay $500, but the guy wouldn't take $500. So he got it for $200 worth of coins plus $100. And that's what the guy took. And the guy thought he could get 400, for the more than 400 for the coins.
Now, is Michael the one that started that Star Trek invention?
Thank you so much for joining us.
Please continue to follow and interact with us on both Facebook and Twitter.
If you use Apple IIe, Commodore 64, or Tandy computers, find us on your bulletin board system. Your 5-star feedback is always welcome.
Theme music provided by Checkpoint Charley.
Until next time, live long and may the Force be with you.
Nanu Nanu.